You're listening to episode number 119 of the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. And this episode is about something I've talked about a lot, and it's something that I want you to air quote get, but it's about money. And I want you to get money in your life, but you're not going to get money in your life until you get what's in this episode. So, if you want to attract more abundance and prosperity into your life, keep listening. Hi, I'm Jim Fortin, and you're about to start transforming your life from the inside out with this podcast. I'm widely considered the leader in subconscious transformation, and I've coached super achievers all around the world for over 25 years. Here, you're going to find no rah-rah motivation and no hype, because this podcast is a combination of brain science, transformational psychology, and ancient wisdom all rolled into one to take your life to levels you've never thought possible. If you're wanting a lot more in life, to feel better, to heal, to have peace of mind, to feel powerful and alive, and to bring more abundance and prosperity into your life, then this podcast is for you, because you're going to start learning how to master your mind and evolve your consciousness. And when you do that, anything you want then becomes possible for you. I'm glad you're here. Okay, money. You know, I don't know how long you've been following me, but you probably heard me say before that, and I've mentioned that I read, it was about a year ago, in the Wall Street Journal, where 78% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. And I mean, that number to me is staggering. And I've got to share with you, just knowing numbers, and I track all of my numbers, all of my metrics, I know my audience, etc. I would have to say that 80% of you listening to this episode and listening to the podcast, you struggle with money. And then I would say that 17% of you, and these are just numbers that have been around for a lot of years, 17% of you probably do okay. There's some variation there of doing well, making six figures a year, all the way to, you know what, I'm doing pretty well, but it's always a struggle and money out. And then probably 2 to 3% of you that are doing really well financially. The reality is that money is very easy to attract into your life. Now, if you've listened to me for any amount of time, you know that literally I grew up a small town Texas farm boy. The town that I grew up in, 2,000 people, and it was actually in the poorest county in the nation. I looked that up a while back. It's Cameron County, Texas. And the majority of the population is Hispanic. And a majority of the population is literally, when I grew up there, which I left in 1983, was migrant workers or farm workers. And my family, we were working class, no question about it. My dad made the equivalent of about $50,000 per year in today's dollars in support of the family of five. And even though we were poor, we thought we were rich because all of my friends, and these were friends since second and third grade, because that's when I moved to the town, these were friends that literally their families had no money. So because all of my friends basically were literally near abject poverty and had no money, I didn't recognize how poor we were until actually I went off to college, and I knew that we weren't doing well like other American families. But I knew that we weren't, we were struggling. But why do I share this with you? I share it because I grew up poor, and I grew up with never enough, never enough. And by the way, episode number 9, you might want to go back and listen to again and again and again and again and again and again, which is why I'm creating this episode. And it's all about getting it, meaning not just getting the money, but getting how to get money. So I get what it's like to struggle and not be able to pay your bills and digging in the back seat of your car for change, which I've done before, looking for enough money to buy a box of tuna, or not a box, but a can of tuna and the box of macaroni and cheese. I mean, I think, that's probably this day and age, probably a $3 meal, depending on where you buy it. But I've been there before. And at this point in my life, I literally do extremely, extremely well, multiple seven figures a year. And I say that humbly because inside, not in terms of my identity in terms of wealth, but I'm still just a small town boy. Even though I've lived in New York City and I've been all around the world. But when it comes to money, money doesn't define me, and I'm not attached to it. It's just a tool that makes life a whole lot easier. Now, let's go into this episode this week. So I'm probably going to title this episode, and by the way, every episode I kind of have planned out what I want to talk about, and I might even sketch out some bullet points. And in this episode, no bullet points. I have no idea where this is going to go or how long it's going to be. But I think I'm going to title this episode something along the lines of Just Get It Already. Meaning get it into your mind, get it into your head. Because I know, and if you've been with me for a long while, I'm grateful and I appreciate it and I'm glad to serve. But we're at episode number 119 now, and I'm going to just tell you, research demonstrates that 90%, if not more than that, what you've heard in these episodes, and I know people that have listened to all the episodes multiple times, is you forget. That's what we do as human beings. And I've shared something with you, which will be the topic of this episode in just a bit. I've shared something with you that you probably have heard me say anywhere from 20 to 50 times in these episodes. And the reality is, even though it makes perfect left brain analytical sense to you, meaning you're like, yep, that makes sense, you still don't get it. When I say you still don't get it, I have no judgments about that. You probably know, if you've been with me for any amount of time, is that I work with a shaman. My brother-in-law is a shaman. And the real deal, and people have even said, well, why does Jim mention his brother-in-law and keep saying he's a shaman? Because I don't know where people are when they come into the podcast. I mean, this could be your very first episode. It could be your 119th episode. I don't know. But I tell you that because I bring, not universal, well, yeah, maybe universal. I bring ancient wisdom to you that literally comes from shamanism and a real shaman. And people even like Wayne Dyer, if you've ever heard of Wayne Dyer, once told me, because I will go anywhere, anytime, any place to meet your brother-in-law, please just let me meet him. And by the way, my brother-in-law declined that meeting. But anyway, he's taught me, and I've watched his examples, he's taught me about prosperity and abundance over the years. And here's what I have said in this podcast, as I said anywhere, I don't know how many times I said, 20, 25 to 50 times, and you get it analytically, but you don't get it. And it is this. Are you ready? And this episode, I'm hoping, I'm praying that it finally sinks in and you're like, okay, that's the aha that I needed, so that I no longer have to live paycheck to paycheck, or money is, flowing into my life. Here's the thing. Are you ready? You are where your attention is. Plain and simple, you are where your attention is. And if you have a lot of money, well, that's where your consciousness, money consciousness, and your attention is. But have you noticed, if you're struggling with money or barely getting by, have you noticed, even though I've even said it a dozen times in these episodes, have you noticed that when you don't have money, that's where your attention is? It's on not having money, not having money. I don't have any money. I don't have any money. I can't pay my bills. Visa's calling me. Ford Motor Credit's calling me. My landlord's beating on my door. I don't have money. I don't have money. I can't do this. I can't do that. And the correlation is so simple that we miss it. And the correlation is this. You've heard me say a bazillion times in these episodes. If you don't have it, which is, let me get back up here. If you don't have it on the outside, meaning in your external world, you don't have it on the inside, which is your identity. And here's the kicker, is if you don't have the identity, and by the way, go back to the earlier episodes if you're new here. And I always tell people, by the way, always go back to episode number 1 and just start from there. But here's the reality. If you don't have it in your identity, then how can you expect to even have it in your attention? So, for example, right now in my attention is, for example, raw oysters. Nowhere even close to my radar or my attention. Why? Because in my identity, I'm a person that you couldn't, well, maybe you could pay me, but I doubt it. I don't want raw oysters. I don't crave, I don't like, I want no part of raw oysters. So therefore, it's not in my identity. And here's the thing also, I could sit here and I could blah, 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 yada, 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 blah, blah for, trust me when I tell you I can talk. And I could sit here for 3 weeks like a Jerry Lewis telethon and blah, 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 blah about money. And you're like, Jim, I get it. I get it. Really great episode. It all makes sense to me. And then what you do is what we human beings do is 5 minutes later, you've forgotten it. And I'm not tossing any stones, as I was alluding to earlier, and not judging, because even working with a shaman, last year he sat down with people that are in his, I'm going to just use this phrase, inner circle, meaning the apprentices. And there are 14, and most of us have been around for 25 years. And he doesn't cuss for the most part. Now, he's my brother-in-law, so we'll talk brother-in-law talk sometimes. But he said to all of us, he goes, it is about damn time that you guys all mastered your second attention, meaning how to see the frequency and energies coming off from things, because everything is energy, everything is frequency, and everything is vibration. How to literally see the frequency coming off from water, how to see the frequency coming off from everything in our lives. And when he said that, and just being transparent with you, I'm getting good at it, but there's no way I've not mastered it, not even close. But the reality is everyone's working on something. We're all working on something at different levels. For example, you've probably heard me say before that a 12th grader is no better than a first grader. They're simply learning their lessons in life. What I want you to get in this episode, please, is just slow down with this and write it down, put it on your phone, but write down, I am where my attention is. And then what I want you to notice, and I give you my word, this is airtight. Wherever you are in life, and I'm making this episode about money, wherever you are in life, that's where you are with your attention to money, and your attention comes from your unconscious mind. Now, I need to actually look at some notes here really quickly. I am going to do a money workshop in August, and it didn't even dawn on me to mention that to you until just now. I'm going to do a money workshop in August, and I'm going to actually help you guys. I'm going to help you guys actually start mastering what I call the components and pillars of money consciousness. Actually, I had to segue there for a second. I had to look at some notes, and that workshop is titled How the Law of Attraction Repels the Money and Abundance You Want and How to Become Rich. Now, there's a similar episode number 9, and that's actually one of my most downloaded episodes. But I'm going to dig even deeper in this particular training. So mark your calendar for August 11th. We'll give you the times a little bit later on. But for now, I want you to, if you're working on your money, I want you to commit to being on that training on August 11th. How the law of attraction repels the money and abundance you want and how to become rich. Now, let's go back to the topic this week about just get it. And I literally want to shake people and say, you know, right, but I've been there. I want to grab them by the collar and say, please, please, just get it already. But notice the title of that workshop that I'm going to be doing, How the Law of Attraction Rejects the Money and Abundance You Want. Well, let's go back to attention, which is what we must master in life. So, if your attention is on scarcity and not having money, if that's where your attention is, well then what do you think you're using the law of attraction, because it always works. What do you think you're using the law of attraction to do? Are you using the law of attraction to bring money into your life, or are you using the law of attraction to repel money and abundance? Newton, I believe, Sir Isaac Newton, I believe it's his first law of motion. And I believe the law is a body continues to stay in, I'm going to mangle this, but a body tends to stay something like in a state of motion unless acted upon by an outside force. Now, some of you are more well versed than I am, but basically what it means is whatever direction that something is moving, whether it be in life or the universe, whatever direction something is moving, it tends to continue moving in that direction unless acted upon by an outside force. And what I mean by that in your life, have you ever noticed before that when you're doing really well, you're what I call spiraling in a positive direction and you're moving in that direction unless you know what, you have a financial calamity and then it knocks you off track. Have you also noticed that when you're not doing well, you're spiraling, not doing well? When you're doing well, you're spiraling, meaning spinning, and you're moving in that direction of doing well. That all goes back to attention. Now, I know you're sitting here where whatever you're doing, you're sitting, you're walking, you're running, and you're listening to this episode, and you're like, yep, checklist. Jim, I got it. But you know what? A week from now, a month from now, if you are still struggling with money, you might get it analytically, but you've really missed it. And that's why the title of this episode is Please Get It. I want to point something else out here, as I'd mentioned, a while back, is I wanted, and I am to some degree changing the tone of the episodes to talk about shamanism, which shamanism is also not just ancient wisdom. Shamanism is physics, it's science, it's sacred geometry, it's mathematics, all things that I'm going to use this kind of cautiously, but all things I've been trained in over the years, and many, many years, and instructed in. A better word is instructed. And what I wanted to point out is about the physics, is about frequency and vibration, which, by the way, go listen please to episode number 9, where I talk about a similar title, how people use the law of attraction to repel, is everything is about frequency and vibration. And your frequency and vibration, let me back up here. So we go, which I mentioned in episode number 9, we go from thought to feeling to vibration and frequency. Now, something I talk about in episode number 9 is you're not going to be rich. You can think rich all day long, but you're not going to be rich until you feel rich, because feeling activates vibration and frequency, which is quantum physics, and everything in the universe is physics. And that's the law of attraction in action, is that you attract whatever you feel. And if your attention is on not having money, and then how do you feel? Are you happy when you don't have money? Most of you aren't. So you feel bad because you don't have money, and then look at what your feeling is, and then your feeling affects your vibration and your frequency, and then guess what do? You attract that right back in your life. And then what you do is you attract back more of what you don't want, and then you feel bad because you're attracting back more of what you don't want, and means you continue to feel bad, and you perpetuate the loop of feeling bad, which perpetuates the loop of scarcity. But notice when you're feeling bad, back to this episode, please get it, where is your attention? This is why this is so vital. Now, somebody today in one of my groups was talking about money, and it's the last week. It's a 14-week transformational program, and he was asking some follow-up questions about money. And I did mention that for us to attract money, we have to feel wealthy. And a lot of people will say things, well, like, if I don't have money, then how do I feel wealthy? That's really simple. Anyone listening right now to this podcast, I don't care where you are in the world. I don't care your nationality, your color, where you're from, what state you're from. I don't care. If you're listening to this podcast, you are wealthy, simply by virtue of the fact that you even have something to listen to it on. So back to where I started this loop, is the way to feel wealthy is gratitude. And so many people think they understand that as well. Jim, I got it. And they don't. I read something one time that hit me right between the eyes, and that passage was, what if you woke up today with everything you were grateful for yesterday? So what would you wake up with today for everything you showed gratitude for yesterday? And I mean, that's sobering for many of you. Now, what I've noticed over the years as well is pretty much everyone will say, yes, I'm grateful. No, you're not. You're just, and I've been there. You're just paying lip service to, I think I should be grateful, therefore I'm going to pay lip service to it. That's not gratitude. When you get into the true feeling of gratitude, that is abundance. That is prosperity. Now you're vibrating with abundance and prosperity. And that's when you start pulling abundance and prosperity back to you. Now, Let me just keep on going here. Like I said, I don't have a single note here, but these things are popping in my mind. I've been here also, what I'm going to share with you, where most of you shoot yourself in the foot, and I have been there, is notice when you have less prosperity, you become more stingy with your money. You hoard your money. So let me ask you, how do you feel when you are hoarding your money? You're in scarcity. You're in fear. Actually, that's the reason that you hoard is because you're in fear. So, law of attraction, and that's where your attention is. So if you're in fear and you're hoarding your money, law of attraction works every single time. What are you bringing back to you? That's why it's so, and transparency. I mean, I'm sharing with you. It was hard for me to get my mind around this for many years, as I used to always work from, you know what? When I have enough money for me and I have enough money for my gas, enough money for gas for the car, and enough money for my rent, I'm going to take care of me, number one, first. And then after I've taken care of me, whatever I have left, then I'm going to go out and help other people. Well, if you resonate with that, if you work from let me hoard, let me take care of me first, I'm going to just tell you flat out, you're working backwards. And like I've said, I've been there. And it's a broken model. I often say a broken strategy or broken model is where I work from now is let me see how much expansion that I can create in life. So where I keep my attention is how much expansion, how much growth can I create in other people's lives. Why? Because when I create that expansion in people's lives, because the universe is expanding, when I create expansion in other people's lives, through the law of reciprocity, what happens to me automatically, because it is the law, it's physics, it's energy, what happens is I create more expansion in my own life. I once had a client who I was he's a billionaire, and he was a one-to-one client of mine 20 years ago. And to make a long story very short, he wanted to set me up in business. We were at his office, Rockefeller Center in New York City, but he said something that's always just stuck with me. He goes, Jim, I want to help you because when I help you, I help myself. Now, I've been chatting here for a while. I don't know how long, 15, 20 minutes maybe, but what I want you to get, and I want you to do some serious introspection, and I'm requesting that you look into yourself. I don't care, because what we do also is we get into self-deception. Oh, no, that's not me, Jim. That doesn't apply to me. And yet 5 minutes later, you've forgotten. You look at your banking statement online, and you don't have any money because you've forgotten what I just said. But your takeaway this week, and what I want you to look at, is the correlation between your external world and how much of your attention and where you keep your attention actually reinforces your external world, even though you don't consciously recognize it or want to admit it to yourself. And for probably the third time this episode, I'm repetitive because repetition is the mother of all learning. I promise you, even if you don't agree or you can't see it, where you are in your life right now with your money, your health, your relationships, where you are right now is a 100% airtight reflection of where your attention is. And if you want prosperity, you want abundance of health, wellness, you want these things, you must first move your attention to these things and onto these things. I remember listening to a guy many years ago. This is back when we had cassette tapes. He's probably 90 years old now. I remember his name was Joe Clock, and this was back in the early 90s. I was listening to him. And he basically said along the lines of, and this is really, really powerful, and it's akin to George Bernard Shaw, something that George Bernard Shaw said, and we're going to wrap up here. And I want to remind you of the upcoming training. But he said, see things as you want them to be, not as they are. See things as you want them to be, not as they are. And I'm going to shift that a little bit and say, see and feel things as you want them to be, not as they are. And I promise you, when you start feeling wealthy, and if you don't have the money, again, go back to, gratitude. When you start feeling wealthy for the things that you have in your life, I promise you, and I could give you a bazillion examples of my own life, when you start feeling grateful for what you have and you start feeling abundant, the universe reciprocates through frequency and vibration that feeling and brings more abundance back into your life. So, title of this podcast, this episode, please get it already, because one more thing I want to share here, and I know a lot of you will like kind of hearing this, but the old way of working, and I'm going to be very short about this, maybe I'll do another episode, but the old way of physical activity, and we have to roll up our sleeves and we have to work for our money, is third and fourth dimension outdated thinking. See, your vibration and frequency exist on all the dimensions, but we now as a species are moving through the fifth and sixth dimension, which is also left brain fifth dimension thinking, and right brain sixth dimension, which is higher consciousness. And when you try the old way of rolling up your sleeves and trying to air quote do things to make money, you're literally working in an archaic way of human thinking, which is what everyone tries to do. You want to work in the fifth, even though if it doesn't make any sense, you want to work in the fifth and sixth dimension, which is simply vibration and frequency, which is physics, which is feeling and thinking. Because we go from thinking to feeling to vibration to frequency. And when you start keeping your attention on that, I've said multiple times in this episode, I promise you, your life will shift. So, your takeaway this episode, two of them. Mark your calendar, make yourself a note, August the 11th. The training is titled How the Law of Attraction Repels the Money and Abundance You Want and How to Become Rich. And I'm a walking example of that because, candidly, I am financially rich and I grew up a literally working class small town Texas farm boy. Your takeaway this week is this. Are you ready? You already know what it is. You are where your attention is. You are where your attention is. Okay, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next week on the next episode. Take care. Make it a great day today. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this entire podcast. If you're the kind of person who likes to help others, then share this with your friends and family. If you found value, they will too. So please share via your social media channels. Also, if you have questions, I'm here to assist. You can email me questions to support@jimfortin.com, and I may even use your question for a future podcast episode. Also, if you want transformational content like this daily, connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram name is I am Jim Fortin. Finally, I do have a personal request. I believe that we're all here to help others and to grow and evolve ourselves. Together, you and I, let's help more people. If you would please leave a review on iTunes, and a good one by the way. I'd be grateful, and through your assistance together, we can transform more lives. Thanks for listening.